First Senator Sherrod Brown is with us, and it's always a pleasure to have the senator drop by. brown.senate.gov, his website, as well as sherrodbrown.com. And, Senator, welcome back to the program.
Good to be back. Thanks, Thom. Happy New Year.
Thank you, and Happy New Year to you. It's nice talking with you in this first week of the new year. Tragically, over 1 million Americans lost their unemployment insurance over the last week or week and a half as a consequence of Paul Ryan apparently digging his heels in that committee with Patty Murray and company. And the federal minimum wage is still stuck where it's been for far too long. You probably know right off the top of your head, but however long it's been. Your thoughts on where we're going to go with these issues, where the Senate is going, and what are you doing about it?
A number of us in the Senate are going to insist on doing both. When we return, in next Monday, unemployment insurance and minimum wage. Underscore unemployment is insurance. It's one of the. It's like Medicare, it's like Social Security. You pay into it, and if you need it, you get benefits. And if you're never laid off, then you've paid into the social insurance program. If you're laid off, you've earned these benefits, and it's really as simple as that. It's not welfare, and in fact, when you're receiving these benefits, to receive them, you need to be looking for a job. And this kind of mean-spiritedness where blaming the unemployed for being unemployed, blaming low-wage workers for their low wages when they qualify for the SNAP program for food stamps is a pretty unforgiving time in American history in that way.
Yeah, well, and you've got Republican senators now who want to amp it up by saying, "Oh, and by the way, if you want those benefits, you have to pee in a cup."
Yeah.
I mean,
and you've got I won't even go into the guy that the hypocrite from Florida that got himself in a situation of illegal activity while advocating that food stamp beneficiaries need to pee in a cup, as you say.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He just came back to Congress, didn't he? In any case, there was a time in this country when Franklin Roosevelt said the best welfare program is a job, and he said I'm not going to give people welfare, I'm going to give them jobs, and he created the WPA and the CCC and dozens of other typically 3-letter agencies, and put America back to work. It cut our unemployment rate in half in 3.5 years. Have we just lost sight of that altogether, or is that sort of after the recession of 2001, the 9/11 recession, did George Bush do the exact same thing? Only it was called the war in Iraq and the war in Afghanistan. In other words, he doubled our military budget. He put a lot of people to work, but he didn't say I'm doing this to put people to work. But the effect was that it kind of helped the economy a little bit. Maybe I'm kind of
well, in a not very efficient way too. $1 billion in military spending doesn't create nearly putting aside any question of military adventurism of a decade ago, but $1 billion in military spending doesn't create nearly the jobs of $1 billion building a highway or $1 billion in AmeriCorps program or something else. I heard Chairman Bernanke speaking not too long ago to a business group that probably didn't really absorb what he said because he really was responding in the way only chairman of the Fed respond and talk about things, but he was responding to this whole idea of austerity. You just keep cutting and cutting and cutting as if that's going to grow the economy. And he went back a decade plus to the same era you're talking about, that when we came out of that recession, we actually increased employment, not just in the private sector, but also in the public sector, to the tune of hundreds of thousands of jobs. In this recovery, is anemic as it's been in some ways. The number of public sector jobs has actually declined. So there are, in relative terms, there are about 1 million more jobs in the public sector, fewer jobs in the public sector now than there were coming out of that recession, because we increased jobs there and decreased jobs now. And what that means is you're trying to grow the private sector, and we've done that at a not terrible pace. At a fairly significant pace, we've seen pull back down because of layoffs of teachers and firefighters and librarians and other public sector workers. So you can't really grow your way out of all this if you just keep cutting spending. and that's what Republican House has insisted on. It's what Paul Ryan, as you point out, who played a major role in stopping unemployment insurance from being extended, what he's done and what he and his ilk have done in this.
They're essentially saying that we can cut our way to prosperity. To the best of my knowledge, that's never happened in any country anywhere in the world. Am I missing something?
Yeah, I think that's right. And somehow that view of everything's about reducing the budget to have economic growth, and it's they use the term pro-growth policies and tax breaks for the job creators and all the things they say, which simply, I mean, we've tried this. We've seen what Europe's done. We've seen how we've come out of this recession, and there's just no evidence that you cut your way to prosperity. There's evidence that you invest. We should be investing in infrastructure. We should be investing in preschool. We should be investing in community colleges and education and health clinics and all of those things that serve the public and create and sort of set the table for long-term growth and actually increase short-term job creation at the same time, and that's what's sorely been missed in these last 5 years.
Yeah. Do you think it's possible that, my conspiracy theory is that these guys are basically saying, if we can reduce government involvement in these things, that's more opportunities for us to make a buck off it. So every $100 billion or every $1 billion we can take out of public education, we can replace that with $1 billion in for-profit education, and we can skim $100 million off the top. Every $1 billion we take, on and on and on. Do away with all these government programs, and now we can make a buck on prisons, on schools, fill in the blanks.
Well,
am I too cynical?
They were cynical, but it's probably there's a lot to it. 10 years ago, a dozen years ago, or even maybe 15 years ago, in the early Gingrich years, and kind of the Gingrich then Hastert delay years, there was all the talk of privatization of everything: privatized prisons, privatized education. There was even talk of privatizing the national parks, in a whole host of issues where they don't talk about it quite the same now, but by cutting spending, you're doing a lot of that. And they get the extra benefit now of being able to criticize the President of the United States for anemic economic growth as they do these things. So their philosophy fits perfectly in cutting spending, shifting as much to the private sector as you can, and then blaming President Obama for this this anemic economic growth we've seen in the last 4 years.
Right. And in the last minute we have here, I'm curious your thoughts on the minimum wage. Where should it go, and what's probably going to happen?
Well, it should go bigger than we're trying to do, but we're just going to keep trying this year. I think there's going to be vote after vote after vote. The last time we increased it was a good bit of pressure on Republicans, but George Bush was president. He signed it. We got a good bipartisan vote in 2007. The minimum wage for tipped employees has been stuck at $2.13 an hour since 1991 for more than 20 years.
Wow.
And this minimum wage hasn't been increased by Congress. Overall minimum wage in 6 plus years. So we need to raise the tip minimum wage, which we're going to in our bill, up to 70% of the full minimum wage. We are raising it 90 cents 3 times immediately upon enactment, and then twice more, and we're going to index it this time, something that should have been done a long time ago. So we're not going to give up on this. This is a small part of the whole idea of this is a small part of the dealing with wage inequality, but it's something clearly we need to do, and it's got to be a piece of the puzzle.